Welcome to a new edition of Weekly Dialogues under Jaipur Dialogues, and today I have a very interesting guest for you. This is Aabhas Maldahiyar, and he's been in the news for some interesting Twitter battles that he's been fighting on Twitter. Those of you who are social media buffs must have noticed it, especially if you are interested in the glory of the Mughals. So that is going to be the topic for this session with Aabhas. Let me introduce Aabhas to you. Aabhas is a professional architect and he's also an author. He's written a book. It's called Modi Again. He has a communist past, which many people may find very interesting, but he is no longer communist. So that will be subject for yet another session. And Aabhas is a columnist, besides being an author, and he is also an amateur history researcher who is very well known for his well-researched long threads on history. So right now what is happening is that the background to this particular talk is Javed Akhtar and his conversation with Tarek Fatah, in which he praised the Mughals to the high heaven. And of course, he's been continuing on that. Even I have done a piece in Hindi on Javed Akhtar, and maybe he may follow with another. But right now, Javed Akhtar is claiming a few things. Number one, Mughals made India richer. Whether they made India rich is not the question. They say that they made India richer. So at least he acknowledges that India was rich before the Mughals came. And the second thing that he's been claiming is that Mughals were secular. Urdu is a secular language. Well, whether the language can be secular or not, or whether the practitioners of that language are secular or not, is a different question. But our conversation with Aabhas is going to be centered on these topics. So Aabhas.
Namaste.
Namaste. How are you? And
I'm doing good.
Nice to have you on Jaipur Dialogues.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did Mughals really make India richer? Shall we start with Babur?
Babur itself is full of lots of mystery which has been quoted upon him. Like foremost story which goes that Rana Sanga called Mr. Babur to come and attack against Lodi and whatnot. So that is how the whole fiction begins with. And it goes on and on with further glorification of Babur. In fact, 6 months back or something, I had come across a very interesting article. I don't remember the writer of the article, but it was about no, Babur was not jihadi. He never had any intent to be a Ghazi or anything as such. He was a very secular leader. And also he was very much into building multi-cultures together, and he respected a lot of Hindu sentiment and many more things. So which again, Babur himself is not agreeing in Babur Nama. But so-called people after 500 odd years are trying to make unnecessary secular out of him, which he or many other Mughals themselves never wanted to be. If we read their stories, the things are very much different. So if we start up with Babur, then if we first go into the fact that why he came to India and what was happening around. So the first myth is that Babur came to India and he loved India so much, and he wanted to make India even more richer, and he saw India as his own country. But had Babur seen India as his own country, then why did he not like himself to be cremated, buried in Indian soil itself? He wanted it to happen in Kabul. So he had a very different idea about looking at India as. And going to the part of Rana Sanga, that if Rana Sanga invited him or not. So yesterday I was going through a very interesting Twitter thread, which I am still reverting upon. It was 25 odd tweets. But just to rebut two tweets only, I required some 25 tweets because people don't go into the detail of the subject. Like if someone wants to quote G.N. Sharma as a historian, but they are not going to into the analysis of the subject that why G.N. Sharma is writing it.
Yeah.
Like G.N. Sharma quotes that yes, Babur wrote to Rana Sanga that please come and join me in the battle against Lodi. I am going to conquer Delhi and so on. And it said that they wanted to partition the areas, that part will be taken by Rana Sanga and the part will be taken by Babur. Then G.N. Sharma further goes on to write that as per the Rajput chronicler, it was definitely Babur who needed the support of Rana Sanga. Rana Sanga never needed the support of it. Then he very swiftly writes one single liner that then Rana Sanga replied. Now this gets very interesting. After that one liner of that Rana Sanga replied. What did he reply? No one of us know. It's assumed and juxtaposition is made that yes, Rana Sanga must have replied that oh yes, I am going to join you in the battle, and agreement is made and things like that. And then they further go on to talk that Rana Sanga did treachery against Babur, and Babur was a good man and Rana Sanga happens to become a wrong man. Now, when we look into Babur Nama, that there was a period when he was traveling to Hindustan. That time Babur was not writing his diary. So this is also admitted by the one who is translating the Babur Nama, and then we have got a translator note. In the translator note to this comes very swiftly. Thus, yes, Rana Sanga invited Babur to fight against Ibrahim Lodi. Now, how can translator's note be considered to be the authentic thing? We should always go for the primary sources. So there is nowhere established by the primary sources that Rana Sanga actually invited Babur to invited to India and to fight a battle on his side. So this thesis completely goes off. It's completely down the drain because the first primary text Babur Nama itself is not admitting it.
Yes, what happens is that you have yourself been a Marxist.
Yeah.
So you must be knowing the way the Marxists write their history.
Yes.
So is this one such piece?
Yes, absolutely. Because the whole story, whether we pick Tipu Sultan or we pick Babur or we pick any invader for that matter, Sher Shah even. No one, I don't know how many even talk about the jihadi aspects of Sher Shah. No one is talking about it. So no one is even talking about, it's become a new normal to normalize that, yes, it's okay. Tipu might have converted, people might have done forced circumcision and also forced feeding the beef. But they are trying to normalize it by bringing in some secular aspect of him, which itself was not secular. Like they talk about the Singeri Mutt and the kind of donation what Tipu Sultan had given. But this again has got a very different story. So history is a thing which cannot be put across just by a one-liner. It needs a very critical analysis of the subject, which somehow the Marxists are failing to do. Rather, they are not intending to do.
Actually, let me add my bit to this.
Yeah.
Whenever you are trying to find some kind of a secular strain within an Islamic ruler, then there is only one test. And that also applies to this secularism of the Sufis. And that test is very simple. The test is whether he was a votary of the Shariat or not. If he was a votary of the Sharia law or not, yes or no. If the answer is yes, which I think in almost 100% cases it is yes, except for the latter period of Akbar, where he seems to have graduated into what people call apostates and apostasy. And for that, there was a lot of ferment, and I still remember a lot of people, a lot of the ulama went against Akbar on that account. And a lot of ulama also went against Dara Shikoh. And from time to time, they had to come and profess their respect for the Sharia. So the test is whether the ruler, whether that Islamic ruler styled himself as an Emir-e-Islam or not, whether he called his forces as Lashkar-e-Islam or not, or whether he exalted Sharia or not. On that test, that is a very simple test. And same test applies to the Sufis, because a lot of people tend to say that Sufis are very secular and they are inclusive and this and that.
Yeah.
But the schism is very clear, rather the subordination is very clear. The subordination of tariqat to shariat is absolute.
Yes.
Only very few, I think you can count them on your fingertips, who regarded tariqat as equal to the shariat, and those people were exceptions, and exception only proves the rule. And the rule is that shariat rules supreme in an Islamic ruler's scheme of things. That was the case with Tipu, that was the case with Babur, that was the case with Akbar in his first half. In the second half, he moderated somewhat. That was the case with Jahangir. In fact, Jahangir, as soon as he came to power, he had Guru Arjan Dev brought, and that was the influence brought by these Naqshbandis, led by Ahmad Sarindi, who was very critical of Akbar. And then these Sarhindis exercised disproportionate influence on all the Mughal emperors. That Ahmad Sarindi's son was Sheikh Masoom. Sheikh Masoom had an exalted place in Shah Jahan's court, and Sheikh Masoom's son, Saifuddin, was the mentor of Aurangzeb.
Yes.
And he was instrumental in getting Aurangzeb to start the project of what is called the Fatawa Alamgiri. And Fatawa Alamgiri is next only to the Shariat for both the Devbandis and Barelvis today. So anyone who follows the Shariat cannot claim himself to the secular, cannot claim himself to be secular. If you are following the Shariat in full, you are not secular, period. That is what I think.
Yeah.
Now the question of who made whom richer. Did India make the Mughals richer, or did Mughals make India richer?
Definitely. See, if we just start off with, and again, I saw a very interesting phenomenon when I came across all this Twitter battle, that everyone is trying to quote some or other random article, whether it's from Economic Times, Business Standard, anywhere. But every article is trying to claim Angus Madison. And interestingly, I am quoting exact pages of Angus Madison and trying to show that no, this is the fact, there was something else. But then again, they will bring down another article to it that no, this is not the case. So that apart, if we really go into the jargons of the numbers or the statistics, so it's very clear that what was happening in India. So if we start off with initially, India's GDP share, as per Angus Madison assumption, it is again a very assumptive thing that how he has made this whole table. But based on that also, if we look till 1000 AD, we were almost 1/3 of the GDP share. Then we can, by that time the Islamic invasion had happened and it drops down to 24.4%. So still 1/4 of it. So it's around 24% to 25%. That is when the Mughals took over India. For the first time, India's GDP drastically fell below China when our Akbar the Great was the ruler, the great economic reformist and whatnot. The first time our GDP share went below China in 1600 AD as per Angus Madison. Now, one more very interesting phenomenon is that though everyone is trying to quote the GDP share, no one is looking at GDP per capita. Because GDP per capita will tell you that exactly. How much poorer or richer the capita the subjects are. So from 1500 to 1820.
If I may interrupt, and also the Gini coefficient. Nobody is even talking about it. Because according according to my research, whatever riches were there, the Mughal court owned almost 1/3 of it. And the people were made poorer and poorer.
Yeah, and there is all the primary sources are crying aloud that this is the case. This is not what you're trying to say. anyone. So coming back to it, from 1500 to 1820, it is negative. The only era of the around the medieval period which saw the negative GDP per capita growth was under the Mughals for that time. And now, which is again, and what I have been doing deliberately, and I am using the books I am using. They generally, if I will use RC Majumdar and then or um, Goelji, then they may come up with that. You are Sanghi and whatnot will start. So I am not afraid to use the Cambridge edition of the book of Irfan Habib. I'm using SM Ikram. I'm using the works of Angus Madison, and all the left venerated or left appreciated books are something which I've been using. Now, Irfan Habib has given very interesting aspects of Akbar. So if I look into what Irfan Habib says about Akbar, Irfan Habib states very clearly that Akbar was an expert of doing extortions. And the highest tax were also during the period of Akbar. Akbar used to make people pay the maximum of the taxes.
Yes.
And then Irfan Habib even talks about the level of corruption which existed during the Akbar period. So he also talks about that how people were forced to do certain kind of overworking. They used to make merchants do overworking, though the payment were not as per the overworking. So the whole system was laid on the principle of extorting money from, forget the very poor one, even the merchants were made to pay a heavy amount. And later on, they say that because the Marathas came into the Marathas were in power, so economy started dropping after Aurangzeb case, that is in 1700. As per Angus Madison, again after 1700, our economic GDP share is depleting. But if again I quote Irfan Habib, he himself is saying that the people were so much into the power acquisition. They were so much about power. The smaller ones of the Mughal, the whoever would be working as subordinate of the emperors, they started a new phenomenon of extortion altogether. So they were trying to extort as much money. The kind of pressure which was put on the merchants that started collapsing economy drastically. No one was willing to do any kind of work. So more of a rebellion was building up among the business class. So yes, the whole scenario was based on extorting maximum of the money, making poor more poorer. In fact, Franco Bernier, one of the person who visited the court of Aurangzeb, gives an account that though the court was full of a lot of gold and silver is flowing, and this is a period around 1700, just 2 years before 1700, when GDP share is highest. But gold and silver is flowing is what he says, but the peasants and the poor are living in disdain. So what does this imply? This again, these words are kind of going in collaboration with the table of Angus Madison. Yes, GDP per capita was reducing drastically. People were becoming poorer.
Right. And there's also this fact that throughout the Mughal era, the only infrastructure works that they carried out were not in India, but in far off Arabia and Mesopotamia. And not just that, there is not a record of a single great road having been built. Sher Shah Suri was the one who got the Uttarapath repaired.
Yeah.
And, that is called that great road, the Sher Shah road as it was, and the Grand road later. But that is the ancient Uttarapath, we know that. Dakshinapath, of course, they did not take much care of. Then there are no canals being built. There are no universities being built. There are no schools being built except for heavy grants being given to nobles and sheikhs for building their madrasas, which catered only to the nobility. And there is nothing what we call or what we know as infrastructure, and which the Indian kings did even when they were under the British. If you look at the more enlightened states like Travancore, like Baroda, like Mysore, the kind of works that they carried out, even the British did not carry out. And even the British carried out a lot of infrastructural works. They built canals, they built a lot of canals because their primary source of revenue was agriculture. So it was in their interest to build as many canals and give as much irrigation in order to increase the produce. And railways, of course, is touted as one of their contributions. Of course, they had great tools of extraction because of their colonial nature. But then to say that the Mughals came here, made India richer, and they became us, I think is not just a bit, but it's a lot disingenuous.
Yeah, completely. Because people talk about the great Aurangzeb. They say a great Aurangzeb. We have historians who just romanticize Aurangzeb like anything. Like perhaps he's even graded more than Akbar in book of many historians. So, but Aurangzeb was busy sending the funds to Makkah.
Yes.
And so the amount which was sent, it was too huge, and it would have taken care of lot many things. In fact, even when the Taj Mahal was built, after that started being building, that is a period when we saw the great Deccan famine, and the amount of money which was put, it would have taken care of so much things. So the whole idea was that yes, they were trying to build on their own riches, while the subjects or the Indian, even if we don't break it into Hindus, Muslims, whatever it may be, the subjects were really suffering very bad at the hands of Mughals. And somehow when they just kept on building their own royalties, the poor kept on becoming more poor.
The greatest contribution of Aurangzeb, on which he spent the maximum money except his war effort, was Fatawa Alamgiri.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
He had I think a team of nearly 500 scholars working on it. And those 500 scholars were brought in from many places, including Arabia, including Persia. And of course, you had a lot of people working here also. And one of the key figures was Shah Abdul Rahim, the father of Shah Waliullah. And Aurangzeb is regarded by almost every Muslim historian as a great reformer. In what sense? He's a great reformer of Islam. He is regarded as a wali. He might have been absolutely not just oppressive, but has been a very cruel tyrant as far as his Hindu subjects were concerned. But it is said, I think it was said by Maulana Azad of all people, and he said that if Dara Shikoh had won, then Muslims would have remained in India, but Islam would have vanished. So that is the kind of thoughts they have. And then this Fatawa Alamgiri is actually the fountain on which the entire theology of the subcontinent rests today. And all these little rebellions that you have, what you call the CAA, the Kashmir Jihad, everything is rooted in that collection of fatwas. So Aurangzeb has a very baneful influence on this country, and unless you get rid of the legacy of Aurangzeb, there will be no lasting secularism in this country, because one section will always admire Aurangzeb in his ways. In fact, today I was going through Twitter and I found a lot of people again starting that great Tipu, the freedom fighter. Of course, you're sitting in Bangalore, so you will be knowing a lot about great Tipu, the freedom fighter, but there cannot be a bigger insult to people than calling Tipu a freedom fighter, the guy who invites the Shah of Afghanistan to invade India in order to fly the custom of Islam is being called a freedom fighter. The guy who takes help from the French and employs the French to repel the English. And in the final battle, it is an extreme example of secularism. The British forces, the Marathas, and the Nizams, they're together against Tipu. So who's more secular? So thank you, Aabhas. Thank you very much for this little conversation. I think you are doing a great job, and with your research, I am sure that you will be able to blow the lid out of this fake narrative that is being built that Mughals made India richer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Namaste.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.